From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Supernova, released in 2000. Starring Angela Bassett, James Spader, Peter Facinelli, Lou Diamond Phillips, and Robin Tunney. Directed by Walter Hill. The synopsis is, in 2101, an emergency medical rescue vessel, the Nightingale 229, and its crew encounter a mysterious survivor of a mining colony and a mysterious ancient alien artifact. The story. The original script, written in 1988 by William Malone, was about a space expedition that discovers artifacts from an alien civilization and brings it back to Earth. One of the artifacts unleashes an evil force from hell. Wow, I mean, that sounds like a fantastic idea, but that's a totally different film from what this became. It was originally called Dead Star and was supposed to be a space version of House on Haunted Hill, released in 1959, and also the one that was released in 1999. It was also supposed to be a lot like Hellraiser, which was released in 1987 and set in outer space, similar to Event Horizon, released in 1997. An interesting mixture of genres there. H.R. Giger even manufactured incredible drawings capturing the vision of the original idea. William Malone would have been perfect to direct his own vision, but the studio went with Jeffrey Wright and then Walter Hill. When Walter Hill was hired to direct, he rewrote the script to lure in big-name actors at the time, and he was really concerned that the people would not confuse the film with Alien, released in 1979, which he produced. However, changing the script, the studio angrily cut the budget halfway through production. Walter left the film, but was credited as Thomas Lee. MGM hired Jack Sholder to try to save the movie, but his version didn't please executives either. And sadly, many of Walter Hill's original scenes were deleted, which included more character development and the original rock electronic-like score by Burkhard von Dalwitz. Even the mighty Francis Ford Coppola was brought in to partially edit the film at one point. It's a classic case of too many cooks in the kitchen. There are so many wonderful sci-fi ideas in the film, however, but what really lowers the quality of the story is the combination of bad character decisions for the convenience of the plot and where they didn't take risks in the film. And the story ends up being a little generic with glimpses of what could have been. I was impressed with the idea, but I was just a little disappointed that they didn't do more with it. The pacing. At an hour and 30 minutes, it seems a lot longer. It's full of events that happen, but not all of them are exciting or even meaningful to the story or the outcome. The challenge. The beginning of the film establishes the main personal struggles of the crew members of the Nightingale 229 medical vessel. They get a call for help from the other side of the universe and must make a jump through a wormhole to get there. During their jump, they lose their captain and bring on board a stowaway by the name of Troy Larson, and he is the son of Carl Larson. We recognize right away that Troy is a scammer. There is just something about him that is untrustworthy. untrustworthy. When we see him in all of his naked glory, he's actually distorted and hinting to the audience that he isn't normal. The whole situation is not normal. Troy has an abnormal bone growth and is harboring the mysterious alien artifact. This alien artifact is actually the top dog of all the challenges for the crew of the Nightingale. The film explains that it is a container of ninth-dimensional isotropic matter that has the sole purpose of what the computer calls dispersal. In other words, it's a bomb designed to destroy everything in the universe and also possibly replenish the elements essential to life that keeps the universe young. When civilizations become too advanced, they find the artifact and set off the bomb that the aliens plant. It begins the cycle of recreation again. Anyone in contact with the artifact gets a euphoric feeling from it, as well as some physical advantages, such as youthing and bone growth, much as Troy did. The doctor on the ship, Kaylor Evers, says that whoever they are, referring to the aliens, they're smart as God and a lot less nice. I thought that was a pretty cool bit of dialogue there. Very cleverly put. I thought, it was the entire idea of the alien artifact is a very ingenious plot device, and there's so much potential to build many stories around this particular artifact. The artifact has some effect on Troy, which I told you about. But what we learn is that Troy is actually Carl Larson, and he happens to be Kaylor's ex-boyfriend, who has de-aged so much that even she doesn't recognize him. And throughout the story, Carl actually makes himself a formidable threat, deceiving the crew while slowly taking over the ship. Now, I'll tell you, he's not very smart because he doesn't know that the artifact is actually a bomb and never looked into it. He just thinks it's something that he can make money off of, that he can profit from. However, he's a very good villain because even though he's not smart, from his selfish point of view, he thinks that it's treasure and he will stop at absolutely nothing to protect it. From his point of view, he is right. The people on this ship want to make permanent decisions about his treasure. It was in his possession when they found him. So it's technically his property. In all fairness, it is not theirs to decide what to do with. Where Carl really wanes as a villain is the fact that he is so immature and petty. It's almost really frustrating to watch this during the film. During his fight with one of the medical crew, Yerzy, he refers to an earlier conversation where Yerzy wanted to split the profits unfairly in Carl's point of view. And that animosity toward the crew members for not supporting his greedy exploits is the main reason he starts murdering everyone. The empathy. I was very empathetic to the good guys in this film, but most of them are also not very smart. And I believe that this was for the convenience of the story, and that doesn't sit well with me. And that's pretty much my biggest issue with a lot of horror films, is how they simply set characters up to die. One film that actually did this right was Aliens, where everyone was really doing their best to survive and they just didn't know the extent of how the aliens could be a danger. Otherwise, though, the characters on the Nightingale had some really good development. The most disposable of the crew is the captain A.J. Marley, who is working on his PhD and doing his dissertation on cartoon entertainment and social research of the 20th century, which I thought was a very cool little bit of information about his character. He's the biggest failure though, because he decides to go after a beacon for help when there was actually a medical vessel that was closer to the call, and then going ahead with the space jump, even though one of the containment units used to store the crew while they're going for this hyper jump was damaged, and then exchanging himself for Kayla as if there were no other members of the crew with lesser importance than the captain. It was a noble move, but oh gosh, it was so dumb on so many levels. Even in the film, one of the crew members even mentions his bad judgment. The next most disposable character are the lovers, Jerzy and Danica, who are pretty much throwaway characters meant to die, as you would have in a horror film. I mean, as soon as they're on screen, you're like, yep, these two are gonna get it. They are the medical crew members that use all of their spare time to have personal relations, let's just say. But there is something a little bit deeper. They want to have a baby one day, which establishes that the world or the society that they live in, babies are kind of hard to come by. You need to fill out forms and paperwork. It seems like it's very complicated. So they make it known that humans that are not modified can have babies. And Danica has like this weird look of trepidation when Jerzy tells her that they can go on ahead and apply to have a baby. And so it just kind of makes you wonder if she's modified because of her behavior during this whole movie. She's told to keep an eye on Troy, in which you can almost see her drool over him as soon as she sees him. And it's no surprise when he easily seduces her with no effort at all. And then she realizes much too late that he's actually a bad guy. Jerzy is all the while getting too close to the artifact to care. He's becoming younger and stronger before he unsuccessfully faces off with Troy. Next is Benjamin, who is a computer programmer, and he is teaching the ship's computer, Sweetie, to engage in human emotional concepts. I think this is the part of the film where it could have been really interesting. His dispatching is probably the hardest to watch as he tries with all of his might to get Sweetie to choose her fondness for him over the protocol. Nick Van Zant is the co-pilot of the ship with a background of drug addiction, prison, and he is also ex-military. He's a layered character you want to get to know more about. You can see he's suffering from some kind of PTSD, but whatever he's going through, now he's trying to do the right thing, and when he does it well. The last character I'm going to talk about is Dr. Kayla Evers, which I actually have to confess I did not like her character. She comes off as if she has like a big chip on her shoulder and she's so cold to everyone. And the film really barely gets into it. I mean, she's actually going through some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder herself, dealing with Carl, and somehow he's connected to her not being able to have kids, which must be pretty awful for her. After she bonds a little bit with Nick, she seems to have more human qualities and becomes more likable, especially when they begin to act as a team. What I do also like about Kayla is that she's pretty tough. I mean, not only because she's, puts on this very cold persona, but she really holds her own against Carl. When the climax of the film requires him to threaten her, she's vulnerable, but she's not a damsel. The technical aspects. The special effects in this film look good in some scenes and, still hold up today. All of the scenes showing the Nightingale 229 are pretty good, and the wormhole jump was pretty good too. I really loved all that stuff. Some of the makeup effects were well done, and we have makeup effects for the captain that's so elaborate and pretty, incredibly detailed. Carl's final monster makeup was supposed to be even more monster-like, but the studio felt that the actor's face should be seen more. And at the time, the actor playing Carl, Peter Fasinelli, was a heartthrob for many teenage girls, so the studio wanted to take advantage of that. To me, the makeup for Carl at the end of the film was very reminiscent of the vampire makeup from Lost Boys, released in 1987, 13 years earlier. To me, it wasn't innovative, but it was enough to let us know that Carl was changing into something inhuman. Now, the actual look of the film is a typical of the early 2000s, with lots of blue and steel and glass, and in my opinion, it's beautifully shot. Much of the camera work was handheld, lots of nice handheld shots that you can feel the energy and the rawness. It almost feels as if you're actually there. Just the way the camera is moving, it seems like almost feels like you're actually standing on the ship. There were lots of Dutch angles, and I think they used the Dutch angles pretty appropriately. There were lots of flares into the cameras and shots distorted by the glass to denote something in the scene was off. Oh my God, I absolutely loved all of that stuff. It's a beautiful looking film, the way it was shot. The soundtrack was originally supposed to have been a very rock, electronic-like score by Burkhard von Dalwitz, as I explained earlier. And I had the pleasure of hearing it. I believe there may be some content on YouTube where you can hear this. It's pretty awesome and would have lent an innovative touch to the film. It's almost Blade Runner-ish. When Jack Shoulder took over the film, he switched out the soundtrack for a more conventional one by David C. Williams. The good thing about this score is how haunting the music is, and I really enjoyed that. So the music could have really gone either way for me. The performances. James Spader really makes this film so good to me. I just love this film, and the first time I'd ever seen him in this kind of beefy, tough guy, no nonsense role, and I would have never guessed that he would be such a great hero. He is fantastic. He has so many subtleties to his expressions and language that really make him stand out. As a unique actor, it's always a pleasure to see him on screen. Angela Bassett is excellent as the Doctor. I think she played it very well off James Spader. These are two very heavy-duty actors, and you really see how serious they're taking their parts. Peter Fasinelli was actually really great in this. He did a good job playing the villain. He hams it up a lot, but it worked for me. And any problems with him on screen, I feel, had to do with the dialogue he was given to say. Some of it was just absolutely dumb, but otherwise, I felt he did his very best, and he did a great job. I think the other actors were absolutely wasted in this film, like Robert Forster and Lou Diamond Phillips. These are great actors, only to put them in a film to die. It just didn't feel right. I was very kind of upset with that. That's where I feel like this film, with all of its potential, just kind of dropped the ball. Now, the best part of the film for me, I really love the last part of the film, from the point that Carl reveals himself to Kayla to the very end. I loved all that part. And I especially loved when Nick flies back to the shift and kind of taunts Carl just a little bit. Just want him to be a hero and just come in and take charge. Now, the ending. There are actually 4 different endings filmed, but I guess the ending as is for me will do. I I really liked it, and I thought that this added touch of Sweetie telling Kayla that she was pregnant at the end, especially since we were told that she couldn't have kids, is kind of a bittersweet ending, because we know that the bomb is going to eventually catch up to Earth. At least in their lifetime, they can enjoy some kind of happiness. Now, the wish list. First of all, I wish the film had made the decision to be a mesmerizing space action thriller, a monster slasher film in space, or its original concept as a Hellraiser in space. All really awesome ideas, but please just pick one. And the film actually turned out to be more like Days of Our Lives set in space, with a little murder and a little action towards the end. And one thing I think that could have elevated the film was to provide some purpose for the characters other than dying. Make them smarter, and pretty much impossible to have the end of the story occur without their help. Give them a contribution. Make them heroes. In fact, I think that the film could have done well with less characters and more of a deeper connection between Kayla and Nick. I also wish that Kayla explained her experience with Carl in better detail. And she was afraid of him, but did he murder her entire family? Did he just hit her? Was there domestic abuse? What happened? And she says she can't have children. Did he force her to become modified? I also feel like, wow, there's a long wish list for this. I also felt it would have been great to have more of a background on Nick as well. Did he have a family? Does he have anyone who cares about him out in space? He's a fascinating character with lots of ways that you can really expand his impact on the audience. And we have a woman who has possibly been abused by an ex-boyfriend and then just decides to throw all caution to the wind and sleep with a guy she hardly knows that's just been clean of drugs, and we're not even sure if he's actually clean of drugs. It's kind of like very quick development for that character to make that decision. I wish that Carl had better dialogue written for the character. It would have been so good to have him be sort of a sophisticated enemy that you love to hate. That would have been really cool. And lastly, I wish it weren't so easy for Carl to take over the ship. He seems to have magical villain powers. He's so invincible. He gets control over Sweetie, and he can do anything. He knows where everything is. He was given full reign of the ship and not quarantined in any way. I mean, if I was running a ship and I had the stowaway on board who was upset that I was probably going to do something bad to his property, I would probably have him on lockdown. I'd probably have security on him. I would probably not leave it to like the skinniest little girl to watch him on the ship. You know what I'm saying? I would have him in a specialized zone on the ship where he would not have access no matter what. That's just me. Now, my enjoyment. When I saw the advertisements for this film back in 2000, I really didn't think much of the film. I love the science fiction and the marketing, but it didn't snag me because the trailer looked like it was going to be really sexually charged, that was going to turn into a slasher film. It didn't look appetizing to me. I got to see the film more recently, and I was actually surprised that it was reasonably good. It had a decent story progression, and I don't feel as if this was like a horror movie. I mean, it hardly has any gore or scares. It was fascinating to me because in spite of the film's problems, it's very entertaining, so it kept my eyes glued to the screen. Along with great cinematography style and some really cool story elements that impressed me a lot, I'm really happy to add this film to one of my guilty pleasures. My rating is an 8.2. That sums up my review. I hoped you liked it. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.